Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share tools and perspectives to equip leaders in self-development and team connection. I am your host, Natasha, and I am excited to share today's episode with you. Today's episode is a conversation with Linda Vergo, a Kon-Mari consultant who shares great perspective on how leaders can use organization to better themselves and their teams. Hello, Linda. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Can I have you introduce yourself and tell us about you and your business?
I would first like to thank you, Natasha, for inviting me to your podcast. It is always such a pleasure and honor to talk with you. My name is Linda Vergo, and I am a certified Marie Kondo consultant, and my company name is Spark Inner Joy, LLC. What does it mean to be a certified Kon-Mari consultant? It means that I completed a series of steps and workshops offered by the Japanese organizational guru Marie Kondo. This process and certification trained me such that I can conduct my passion for organizing by using her world-renowned Kon-Mari method. And this method is about creating a joyful life. It's a formal process by which you keep what sparks joy for you. And that results in a home or office where you are surrounded by joy. As a Kon-Mari consultant, I help facilitate that journey for my clients. The Kon-Mari process is something that can be completed by oneself, but as we all know, as people, we have our own strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes it's easier to tackle the job with a consultant. My business is to assist those people or organizations that can benefit from outside expertise.
I love that, and I really love that you said home or office, because I think that whether we work from home or not, especially when we work from home, we have these two places where we spend so much of our time. And I think when people heard about Marie Kondo and then her method, and there was like the show that was on Netflix, which was great, and it was all about the home. So I'm excited to talk about that piece, but also the how do we bring it to the office piece. So was there a specific event or something that happened that empowered you to follow this path?
There really was a specific event that empowered me. Actually, as with anything, it was a series of events. A few years ago, I downsized from a large house to a condominium. And even after much purging during that process, I still found myself surrounded by too much stuff. It was really overwhelming. My adult daughter reached out and she said, "Hey, Mom, have you ever heard of Marie Kondo? I think you will really like her." Well, as they say, the rest is history. I literally quit my day job as a senior data analyst to pursue this new path. I read, like you mentioned, Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, and I watched her Netflix series, which you also mentioned, multiple times over. And then I set my mind to declutter my own life. And it was because of my personal experience of going through that life-changing magic of tidying up that I realized my true purpose, which is to help others navigate through this journey. It seemed like all of my past experiences kind of melted together to show me that this was the task best suited for me. I really never enjoyed sitting behind a computer all day as a programmer. I was always in front of the computer. I preferred helping somebody one-on-one. And my mental organizational skills to work with computers and data, effectively are really the cornerstones that are needed for spatial reasoning or organizing. It just all fit together at the right time. It was really like a magic moment.
And I never thought about it from that perspective, just the spatial reasoning. And I love that. That's so great. So within this, you said you were not as thrilled about sitting behind a computer. And so you left this life to start your own business. Prior to that, had you done any other entrepreneurial pursuits, or was this kind of the first time you did that?
I have to say I've always been someone that has a multitude of projects going on simultaneously. I don't like to just sit idle. And Natasha, I think I have a feeling you can relate to that. Yeah, as a teenager, I used to design clothes and I would sew them. I also created accessories, jewelry, and handbags. And then I would go down to a local store and I would sell them in that shop in town. So I've been doing these things ever since I was able, I would say. And many years later, when my children were babies, I started my first company. I designed and manufactured a new shape of children's hooded towels. So I had sewn them myself, and I am forever trying to improve on things. When I see something, I look at it and I wonder, oh, how can I make that better? So I came up with a new towel design that would snuggle the kids better and keep them warmer after a bath, because well, a cold child after the tub is something, that's difficult to deal with, especially 3. But after a few years, that business was not successful. But I did certainly learn a tremendous amount, and that's what it was all about. It didn't deter me from starting a new business many years later. I have to give a lot of kudos to my husband, who is always supportive of my ideas and my pursuits. Well, mostly the good ones anyway. His acceptance and encouragement were really tantamount to being able to take on the challenges of starting a company.
There's so much power in just having a supportive partner or a supportive friend or someone who just really has your back when you're trying these new things, because it's scary. And if somebody can kind of hold space for that, that's a really phenomenal thing that not everyone has.
Absolutely.
So you've told us some about the Kon-Mari method. Let's pretend that I've never heard of it. I am brand new. This is our first meeting together. How are you explaining that to me?
The Kon-Mari method, the name Kon-Mari is actually made up by Marie Kondo of her last name and her first name, Kon-Mari, together creating Kon-Mari. It's also known as the life-changing magic of tidying up, and it's a transformational journey. It's a process defined by 5 categories: clothing, books, papers, kimono, which is miscellaneous items, and finally, sentimental. When a person is ready to take on the Kon-Mari journey process, they'll compile all of their items of a particular category into one place, and then they face each item in that category one at a time and determine if that item sparks joy for them. If it does spark joy, they keep the item with confidence, but if it does not spark joy, then they let the item go with gratitude. The beauty of this process is that you confront your past and yourself, and you really reconnect with all of your possessions. And I know it can be difficult, but it's really the only proven method to have lasting effects and long-term success. It could even alter the way you treat and acquire possessions going forward, too. And the Kon-Mari method is usually done in 2 stages. So first you declutter by going through the 5 categories I just mentioned in that order. Then after decluttering, you organize your possessions. So each item you have chosen to keep is one that sparks joy, and therefore it needs to be treated with respect. So to do so, you select or create a space for each item. And then that is its new home and where it belongs. So everything has a place and a place for everything, sort of that old adage. And there's really at least two amazing side effects of this strategy. One is when an item is easy to put away, you will be much more likely to put it away, which dramatically reduces clutter, dramatically. And 2, the net result is that you're surrounded by things that make you happy and bring you joy.
That is so amazing. I feel like I have read the book, like I said, and I've watched the show, and that was so much more in depth and so much more of the feeling behind it than I was expecting. Have you found that there are certain times when people just are really kind of fighting the process and they're struggling to move forward? And how do you help them with that?
I absolutely have come across that. At least one client that I've had has tried a different method where that touch it once method, like don't touch it more than once. So certainly with the Marie Kondo method, as I was explaining, you do touch things more than once. So that can be frustrating for a client, and they might really give pushback on that. So I just have to be patient and listen and persuade them to give this a try. And they did come around and realize, like, okay, this method does make sense. It was counter to what I thought, but it really does work.
I would imagine, yeah, it's hard to change a behavior. And when your life is surrounded by the results of these behaviors, creating an even bigger challenge.
Absolutely.
So we tend to think of this method for our homes, right? Because we think clothes, stuff like that. But how can we apply this to our workspaces, both those that are in our homes and external to our homes?
That's a great question. There's definitely a lot of overlap. And especially now with so many of us working from home, there's even more of a need to have your workspace decluttered and organized. And this concept extends to our digital life as well. If you think about how much time you spend every day looking for things, you will be amazed. We've all gotten stressed out when we're looking for something we know we have, but we just can't find it. Like, for example, an email. We know we read it, or a work article that we kept because we know we would want it later. But when you want it, you can't find it. And it's so frustrating and such a waste of time. So according to Marie Kondo's second book, Joy at Work, data shows that the search for lost things adds up to an average of 1 work week per year per employee. So in the US alone, this loss in productivity is estimated to be about $89 billion annually. The effects of clutter can obviously be devastating. So whether your office is in your home or external to your home, it's really quite important to keep an organized and decluttered space.
Those numbers are insane. And when I'm thinking about it, even just today, it took me about 15 minutes to find an email where I was like, I know this person sent me a meeting invite, and I was trying to find the meeting, and it was my fault. I labeled it super weird. And then, but to go back, but even if I just think about that today, that was 15 minutes. And
there you go. Wow.
That adds up.
Case in point, right?
So with this, it's not just, you said it was the digital space, and we have like the physical organization of stuff, but what are ways that leaders and professionals can go about organizing their professional lives, specifically in that digital space?
That is definitely not a simple one to answer, as there are really very many ways. One good place to start is your digital or electronic world, like we were just talking about. This may not be as visual as desk declutter, which you visually can see, but the electronic disorganization can affect you just the same. When I was a senior data analyst in my previous career, I often worked closely with the chief medical officer. She was my idol. I was amazed at her abilities, her composure and calmness, and her organizational fortitude. One of her many exemplary habits was to clean up her email inbox before she left the office every day. She never had more than 10 emails outstanding. I was in awe that she could do this. I can't even imagine how many emails she received on a daily basis. But she developed a system that worked for her, and she kept to it. This practice, it allowed her to deal with things immediately, which was critical to her position. And she was always abreast of the latest information. Well, getting your email inbox decluttered can ultimately help you get your work done more efficiently and effectively. Now, I know something like that, if it's already, in kind of in bad shape, it's going to take a while to get it into good shape. So there's definitely a time component on the front end to make it better and easier in the long run. For other digital items like files and things like that, the methods are similar for those things at home. You try to set things up so that it's easy to put things away. And when you know where a digital file belongs, you're much more likely to save it accordingly. And then the great benefit is that you'll be able to retrieve it easily when you need it. I know in one of your previous podcasts, Natasha, you talk about leading with love. And I think it's really important for leaders to recognize that not everyone organizes in the same way. What works for one person may not work at all for another person. So as a leader, showing care for your workplace can have a positive ripple effect throughout your office. A clean and cared for workplace can improve work performance, not only for you, but for your staff as well.
I love that. And I completely agree, because oftentimes I know when I've seen leaders or even just coworkers who have very cluttered desks, even, I feel like I'm not probably going to go into their office and talk to them because they just seem overwhelmed. And then I know the other day someone was sharing their screen and you could see their email, and it was their personal email, not their work one. And it was fine, but it was like Gmail, and they had thousands of unread emails. And all I was thinking in that moment was I would have a heart attack. Like, that's too much. So you're absolutely right, though, it's what can people handle and how do they organize different things? When I was meeting with one of my coworkers today, we brainstorm every Friday, and the way that she brainstorms is very more like kind of scattershot and then pulling it all together. Whereas I tend to brainstorm just very, what's the next step and the next step in a slightly more linear fashion, not perfectly linear, of course. I love working with her, but when I think about just kind of even the differences in how we approach a problem, I think that's so important for leaders to remember.
Mm-hmm. Very important. That's a good point.
So on my work computer, I need to figure out my system, but on my personal computer, I will say that I have a pretty intense system of organization, but I can find things very quickly there, which I do appreciate very much. Work computer, no. I'm like, where is it? Downloads, where is it?
It's a different beast.
Right, that's right. How can the act and skill of organizing be beneficial for mindfulness and navigating our daily tasks?
It's interesting you bring up mindfulness because I've actually been practicing mindfulness lately and learning about mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. From the readings and the exercises that I've done, I've come to notice many similarities and overlaps between mindfulness and Marie Kondo's method of decluttering. So treating all objects, inanimate objects, with respect and appreciation creates a sense of calmness and well-being. And as a leader, it's so very important to set the tone in your business and professional environment. So having a clean desktop and organized office space shows your employees that you care. And just like what you mentioned, that you see that cluttered desk, like, oh, I don't want to bother that person, they're just so busy. You know, maybe they do that on purpose so that you leave them alone. But I recently read an article about Nancy Kogan, the founder and CEO of the company called Happier. And she has a new book out called The Awesome Human Project. I don't know if you've heard of it before. She's an entrepreneur of emotional fitness, and she has experienced great roller coaster rides of failure and success in her own personal and business life. And here's a quote from her. When we pay attention to our emotional inner experience, we naturally find ways to support ourselves, which I just thought was a really interesting quote. And small, simple practices offer lasting benefits. This is completely true of Marie Kondo's tidying method. Simple daily routines help you keep on top of things and give you more free time for the things that you really want to do. It does, again, seem sort of counterintuitive, but if you take care of these small things, you'll have more time for what you really want to do, what your heart really wants to do. The Kon-Mari method results in an environment filled with what sparks joy, which makes you happy, which should ultimately result in you being more productive at work. So it's kind of a win-win cycle.
Have you also seen anything by the minimalists?
I have. It's been a couple of years. A few years ago, I saw things by them.
The thought is around cultivating the items in your life so that you are surrounded by the things that you love. So a lot of the things there, especially around that mindfulness of, and you mentioned it, just to throw back to what you had said even earlier, where it's like, what am I even bringing into the space? Does that kind of work for what it is that I'm aiming for, the vibe I'm trying to cultivate? But when I kind of see these different things, I like how there are different perspectives in the environment where they're like, yeah, it's just, of course, minimalism, totally different approach. But that whole, there's this mindfulness and there's this calmness that comes with not having to deal with so much stuff. Like you said, whether you're trying to find something or whether there's just so much stuff around, which I know for me, I cannot work in the desk needs to be cleared. It just, things need to be cleaned and cleared off, or else I feel like I can't think clearly.
I agree. A lot of people might think that, well, I can't be creative if everything is so neat and tidy. I need that cluttered feel around me to give me that creative spirit. But that's really not necessarily the case.
What are the bigger implications and benefits of organizing that we don't see right away?
To me, a huge benefit of tidying up and organizing is the long-term financial savings benefit. Whether it's in the home or in the office, this method will change your purchasing habits forever. One of my favorite quotes from Marie Kondo is, "The waste happens at the point of consumption." What this means is that you cannot feel badly about something you purchased and then later realize that it doesn't spark joy. Don't hold on to something just because you spent money on it. If you no longer want to keep it, you should not hold on to it, but you should let it go with gratitude. It has actually taught you that you did not need to buy that item. So this direct connection with your possessions and having these courageous conversations with yourself will lead you to be mindful in the future. For me personally, it has really helped curb that, quote, "I need to have it" mentality, which you were just talking about, which is pushed on us every day by media and marketing professionals. So that was sort of a game changer for me. Referring to Nancy Kogan again, she used to feel that, quote, "leaders were supposed to suffer." But she now teaches that companies are finally realizing that stress impacts work and how leaders show up. So if leaders can show compassion, it can boost motivation and reduce stress for everyone.
I really appreciate that because I feel like over the last couple of decades, we've really kind of stepped into this whole, or stepped away from this whole, like, leadership is lonely. It's lonely over there. You show up first and you leave after everybody else, and to the detriment of your home life and your family. When you have brought it up several times here that ultimately we're setting an example and we're modeling the way, whether it's through how we have things organized or through our behaviors, that we're really showing people that, like, no, this is completely how you can show up, with also respect to different styles and different things that people want to do. But yeah, I really love that call out because I think that's super important for leaders and for people in general to know someone's watching you. So, model what is truly best for you, that's the most authentic, because then that also helps you stay mindful and not feel like I need all the things.
Yes, I totally agree.
What advice would you offer current leaders in any organization?
I would like to offer that tidying up helps you find a sense of purpose. This can be true for leaders as well as for staff. Next to the home, work is where we spend most of our time. And perhaps for some, we spend more hours at work than at home. Tidying can help you get in touch with what you really want. For instance, when I work with a client, the first thing we do is discover their vision of an ideal lifestyle. Sometimes it's not so straightforward, and we really spend some time figuring it out and reworking it as the client goes through the journey. In the end, they realize, though, what they need to change in their lifestyle to be where they truly want to be. And the tidying process may help someone identify their ideal job or workplace and help them discover what they truly value in life. To quote Marie and Scott from the book Joy at Work, in the end, the real goal is to discover what brings you joy in your work so that you can give it your best. One thing you may not know about me is that I have a black belt in Taekwondo. It is from many years ago, but I'm still in contact with my instructor, Grandmaster Chris Burlow, and he is always full of sage wisdom. I'd like to share with you a comment he made recently, which is, always remember a happy home life is a key to business success, because without it, there is no place to rejuvenate. I think that advice is so applicable to today's world, where the line between home and work has gotten very fuzzy.
I completely agree. I love that. Also, I did not know that you were an assassin. So good to know. That's so true. We need to find these like sanctuary spaces for ourselves in our workplace and in our home, because then that does lead to that mindfulness. When we can be more mindful and in the present moment, we are better leaders. And in general, we're also better people because we're really there for the people who need us to be there.
Absolutely.
Do you have a book or resource that you recommend to others?
I'm going to recommend a couple right now, if that's okay. I, of course, recommend Marie's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. So this was a game changer for me, and it really was life-changing magic. It's well written and it's easy to follow. It's fun to read. And she walks you through the steps to take to improve your outlook on life and how you experience every day. I'd also like to recommend Marie's second book, Joy at Work, of course, where she and Scott Sonnenschein discuss how to extend her method to the working world. It's full of great advice and tips on how to declutter and organize your workspace and your work habits. And lastly, I highly recommend Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the many amazing things that he talks about is architecting your environment, which is a great tool for developing new habits. And it definitely works. I've tried it myself. It's very helpful. So those are 3 books that I would suggest.
I love all 3 of those. And yes, I think Atomic Habits is one of the best books written on habits ever. I think, that one and The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg are the 2 best I've ever seen. Because they make it so actionable. And like you said, we are creating this life and the things that are around us. So how do we do that in the best, most productive way possible?
Absolutely.
When people want to find you, how and where can they do that?
Thanks for asking that. If someone wants to reach me, they can contact me by email at sparkinnerjoy@gmail.com or by visiting my website, which is www.sparkinnerjoy.com.
This has been so amazing, Linda. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Natasha. I really loved it, and I look forward to doing more work with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Equipping Leaders podcast. For more leadership development content, you can visit my website, natashacheyenne.com, where you will find my leadership journal with dozens of articles, and the Cultivation Cafe, which is always growing and has leadership frameworks, book recommendations, and inclusion and mental health resources. You can also follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha or at Equipping Leaders Podcast, and on Twitter at Natasha Cheyenne. Join me next week for another episode.